Okay.
How are you guys doing? So I realize not everybody is allowed to unmute the mic, so I'll allow all mics and also allow all your videos. Wherever you are, you can react, but you can also now speak. Your videos and your cameras are all allowed, so you'll make the decision when to unmute and when to mute. But as for a start, I
Hello,
would
can
say,
hear you.
yes, Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm very fine. Pleasure being here and looking forward
Thank
to
you.
the conversation.
No, thank you. Welcome, and we're glad to have you as well. So great. As we get started, I think one of the key things that we love doing as African Pharmaceutical Network is getting to know who is in the room. So probably I'll just ask all of us, introduce yourself in the chat, name, country you are coming from, your professional background, and something that you're looking forward to today. As a Juliet to help us bring up the introductory questionnaire so that we get to know who is in the room. We also get to connect with each other. The aspect of networking that we appreciate here is the LinkedIn one. You share your LinkedIn profile, whoever clicks on it, probably they'll have something they want to share with you. You build your community, and that is how we build each other in the professional journey. So let's make the best of it. Name, where you're joining us from, something you're excited about today as we get started. So the link is in the chat, but you can also type in the chat, and I see Juliet has already projected it on the screen as well. We have 21 people who have decided that at least we get to engage before they start the weekend. So we're really honored to have you here with us. Hi, Hilary, how are you?
Hello, I'm very fine.
How is Kampala?
Kampala, Kampala is okay. I'm not in position to speak because of background noise.
Oh, okay.
I'll mostly speak through chat.
It's okay, no worries. Not a problem at all. So guys, I'm waiting on us to contribute to the chat. The survey is already on. The chat is active. So let's see. Zero responses yet, zero comments in the chat. Okay, I see Halat Kiza from Uganda. Safin Gobi from Nairobi. Solomon from Uganda. Welcome. I'm seeing new comments, Uganda, Ghana, Kenya. Oh, who is the friend from Ghana? Welcome from the Western Africa. At least you're still early in the day compared to us. Scroll to the next one, Juliet. Let's see. I'm hoping people will be able to fill the survey as we move along as well. How are you feeling? Blessed, happy, full, great? Okay, that's good. Positive vibes on a Friday. The next one. MAH responsibilities, learning about QPPV, MAH responsibilities, and learning about pharmacovigilance. So I think that is a good place to start. Current state requirements in Uganda, PV regulations, learning about QPPV, the atmosphere in Uganda. And I love the fact that we have so many people from Uganda. So the guys from Uganda, I'm counting on you to also contribute here and help us have a very interactive and very engaging conversation together. So yeah, I'll encourage that we keep filling the survey form, keep giving your feedback, your comments, so that we move it forward. Noel, Uganda industrial pharmacist, eager to learn more about pharmacovigilance responsibility in an industrial setting. Awesome, awesome. I like this. So, confirm you all can hear me perfectly well and clear. Because I'm keen on kicking Juliet out so that I can bring my class slide and get us into the agenda of the day. It's something that I normally like. You give me a thumbs up from your chat, from the reactions, the top of your screen, just to confirm you can hear me. I've seen 2 so far. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, Roland. Awesome. So that is a confirmation that we're all here clearly. Can hear me. So what I'll do for starts, I'll switch off my camera so that we have better bandwidth as I bring my screen. And let me know when you can see it.
Yes.
So whoever comes in will join us as we move along. So this is how the flow of the session will be today. One, I'll talk about the work that we do as African Pharmaceutical Network. Subsequently, I'll get into the pharmacovigilance and the regulatory landscape in Uganda. And then the reason as to why we are doing this conversation is more around, one, we have new developments in the Ugandan regulatory landscape. And with that development, there are new opportunities, but also new requirements for industry to comply with. And therefore, we need to understand, what does this compliance mean for you as an industry? What does this compliance mean for you as a professional? And how do you position yourself in whichever way as an industry to comply with those requirements, as a professional to be able to tap into those opportunities and grow in your career? And the essence of us as African Pharmaceutical Network is to bridge that gap and say, if I'm an industry person, how do I comply so that we drive growth of the industry? But in driving growth of the industry, we need the professional. So how do we get the professional to be at their best to support the industry to achieve its mission and to deliver on our aspirations at that continent? That is the foundation of our conversation today. And that is what we'll be talking about as we look at the developments in the Ugandan pharmacovigilance landscape, but also what opportunities does present and what do we do to prepare for that eventuality, that future that we are seeing coming to us and that we aspire for in the next frontier. That is critical. So as African Pharmaceutical Network, we are a Pan-African convener and advisory firm. We bring together stakeholders, promote knowledge sharing like what we are doing today, shape policies and advocate for policy transformation where they need to be, and most importantly, focus on nurturing partnerships that are innovative in the sense that they enable us to get people the products and technologies that they need to live healthy and fulfilling lives in whatever space that they are within the continent of Africa. And we do that through our strategic interventions. Some of them is in our workforce development, which is training programs, business advisory and consultancy services. And the last piece is mostly market linkages where necessary. Why is this work important? We all are in this continent of Africa and we understand access to healthcare services and health products is not a guarantee to some people. It might be a guarantee to some, but not everybody. So the question you ask yourself is, how do we make access to healthcare be a reality and a possibility for everybody in the continent? And we have a limited local industry. That's one. We have a growing threat of global challenges in the continent, including disease outbreaks that we've been contending with, and substantially that has been a pain point. We have a segregated and disjointed industry where every component of the industry is working in their own space. The person in the hospital does clinical work but doesn't understand what happens in the industry as much as they should. And they also don't interface to share those knowledge and those insights. How do we enable that cross-pollination of ideas so that we're able to drive growth of the industry from clinical research to the last mile access to the patient who is counting on that medicine being made available? And when we established the platform in 2020, the foundation was, let us be the convener that enables these conversations to happen, catalyzes the action, and delivers solutions that enable professionals to thrive, industries to grow, and to prosper in the respective countries where we are operating in. That is the foundation of why we are here. So our mission is to ensure reliable access to safe, effective, and quality health products and technologies in Africa through our work in workforce development, business ecosystem support, and policy shaping. Our success situation is a healthy and productive population anchored on reliability and access to safe, effective, and quality health products and technologies in Africa. What services do we offer? We offer training services through the African Pharmaceutical Biomedical Sciences Training Institute. This is the first time actually that I've mentioned the institute officially, but we have an institute that is officially being flight and will be operational from next year as an institute on its own account as a single entity. At the moment, it's still a component and a pillar of our work at African Pharmaceutical Network. We have regulatory support services, which is mostly the consultants work we do. Business ecosystem support, mostly market research, market intelligence, also distribution agreement structuring and partnership development across the ecosystem. The last piece is working with governments and regulatory agencies to shape policies and to enable businesses to deliver value where that needs to happen. What courses do we have in the institute that I just mentioned to you? We have regulatory affairs training, pharmacovigilance and patient safety, pharmaceutical supply chain management, medical affairs, and lastly, product management in life science industry. Each of these courses addresses a critical gap and a critical pain point in the industry. Regulatory affairs, regulatory system strengthening is ongoing in the continent, and the question is, how do we ensure the professionals understand the regulatory requirements, are able to implement them, and are able to safeguard the products that are getting into the public to meet the safety and efficacy and quality standard that we aspire for? That is the foundation of regulatory affairs. Building industry, building professionalism, and safeguarding public health. Pharmacovigilance is safeguarding public health, but by looking at the adverse events, also ensuring we have robust systems that in case of a safety issue, it will be identified, it will be resolved, mitigated, and managed appropriately. And the differentiator around this is we are looking at it from an industry lens. If you're working as a pharmacovigilance expert in the industry, what expertise do you need to have? How do you need to do it? And also, what system do you need to put in place to have a robust pharmacovigilance system? That is going to be key in part of the module that we offer. Supply chain management, managing the supply chain system from forecasting or demand generation to actually delivery of the product. And also we have the reverse logistics. We all talk about antimicrobial resistance and related. How do you mitigate for this through efficient, robust, resilient supply chain systems? Very important, and even the use of digital technologies and data. In medical affairs, we talk about medical evidence. How do we generate medical evidence that one delivers clinical value or confirms the clinical value of our product? How do we generate the evidence that convinces the reimbursement of the insurance agency to pay for that medicine so that it gets to be used in the healthcare system? But also, how do we generate new insights to support repositioning and product placement in different therapeutic areas where necessary and where viable for us? The last piece, product management. You own a product, you bring it into the market. It's not only marketing. You need to manage and understand what costs are we going to incur to develop the product, to commercialize the product, and actually make the product be in the market. And as we are doing that, what fundamental principles do we need to follow to make an investment that is sound, but at the same time that is enabling to the ecosystem where we're working, which is delivering quality to the patients and to the public who are counting on us to do that. Those are fundamental foundations, and those are the key starting points on the work that we're doing. Those are the 5 courses. We have our enrollment for this process for the 3rd cohort, which is the last cohort of the year, 2026, ongoing. We'll start most of the courses on the 2nd week of August to the 1st week of September. But after that, That will be the last cohort. The subsequent one will come next year, when we'll now be fully under the institute, as I mentioned, African Pharmacovigilance Medical Sciences Training Institute. So with that said, I get into the gist of our conversation, and I'll request maybe Juliet and the team, you can share the link to the different courses and the link to our website for whoever would be interested to be able to apply and enroll for the courses for those who want to. That would be an opportunity, and we'd be more than glad to have you join us and learn with us. You know, some of the guys already here already are people who have taken the courses with us and have learned with us. They'll be able to share some of our experiences if we need some guidance to make it make sense for you, but also to make it be aligned with your career aspirations and development needs. So with that said, I go to the pharmacovigilance landscape in Uganda. What are the functions, roles, and responsibilities that are critical and that are fundamental? But before I go to the specifics of what those functions and roles are, we need to ask ourselves why pharmacovigilance is important and why vigilance specifically. When I looked at this topic and when we started the conversation on having this webinar, I told myself, one, we are always constrained to think about pharmacovigilance only. But pharmacovigilance is just one part for pharmaceutical products. There's medivigilance, which is looking at the medical devices and medical technologies. We have epivigilance, epidemiological impact, and actually the safety issues around epidemiological products. Mostly would be more critical in public health programs and related. We have vigilance in blood products and technologies. There are so many other areas where we need vigilance principles, but not only pharmacovigilance. So it's important for us to understand when we talk about vigilance, it's across the continuum of health products and technologies, from food supplements, from foods, to cosmetic products, to medical technologies, medical devices, all that have a risk factors. How do we mitigate for that? And why is it important? One, safety, efficacy, and quality of health products and technologies must be maintained at all times. So unless you can demonstrate you maintaining it and you have a system to guarantee that it will be maintained, there is a problem. And that is what we are mitigating through. And another piece beyond the safety, which is the fundamental, is that it is a regulatory requirement. And what makes it a regulatory requirement? When you look at the foundation of regulatory affairs and pharmacovigilance being part of regulatory affairs, the genesis was that governments have the responsibility to safeguard public health and to guarantee access to health products and technologies in all the respective countries where they govern the states. And on that account, then it is in their best interest to demonstrate that commitment. How do they demonstrate it? By putting in measures to say, if somebody, David, today brought in poor quality medicines, it will not be allowed into the market. If Polycarp brought in a poor quality cosmetic product, it will not be allowed in the market. That is what governments need to demonstrate. And how do they demonstrate it? By putting in place authorities and regulatory agencies, but also laws that govern how they do that function. So regulatory affairs became an enabler on that. But on company side as business, for you to sell your product in a country that has laws, you must comply, which means regulatory requirements become fundamental in that level. So you're dealing with those two things. So then it means for you to access the market, you must comply with regulations. For the government to commit to fulfill their obligation and their duty of care, they must have regulatory frameworks. Those are the two key pieces. And all that is anchored on the fact that patients, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, everybody in the health ecosystem, including consumers of healthcare services, make decisions based on their trust on that system. And the one way that I can trust that the medicine is safe is if you tell me it has been approved in Kenya by the Pharmacy and Medicines Board, in Uganda by the National Drug Authority, because they have the duty of care for the people, and which makes regulation an enabler of trust for me to use a product. Otherwise, nobody would want to use any of the products that we are using, unless there's other evidence that they're using as an enabler and as a caveat for whatever the quality parameters that we're looking at. So that is important to understand. And now when you look at that understanding and we go to regulatory oversight in different countries, they normally are anchored on regulatory frameworks. These start from laws as the foundation. There must be a law and the foundation. And when we go to the other parts, you realize the reason as why we're having this is because in Uganda, there is a new law for regulation of health products and technologies, the Renewed Act, with the new provision, new requirements, and new mandated responsibilities for each and every stakeholder. And that I will talk about some of them today. Then once we have a law, there must be policies on how we intend to implement the law. And the policies give us our aspirations, our desires on where we need to be. And then regulations will give us the framework on how to implement the law, but also with the policies as it should. Once we've gone to laws to policies, policies to regulations, we now define guidelines. The guidelines give you instruction on how to do what you need to do and where to do it and where. Then other than guidelines, we have guidance notes, which are the most granular regulatory framework documents that are in place. Whoever has taken our regulatory affairs course, we cover some of this with the course that we do. So that is an important understanding that there's always a process. So with this understanding, when I talk about Uganda having a new law, that law has new provisions, and those new provisions will come into regulations, into guidelines, into guidance and procedures. And as an industry, we must implement it. We should implement it, and we need to implement it. The question is, how do we prepare to implement it and apply it so that profits are? Do we have any questions on this point before I go to the next part? Any questions, any comments from the team? I don't want to leave anybody behind. Are we okay? My thumbs up again. Is we okay? Yes, Augustus. Okay. That was a thumbs up that became a raised hand. It's okay. Good. So with that understanding, when we go to the next part, and the next part, what I'm going to look at here is, what is the regulatory landscape in Uganda? I talked to you about the new law that has been passed. We have the National Drug and Health Products Authority Act 2026, signed by the President in April 2026. So that law is already in place and it is to be implemented and operationalized. The entity mandated to implement and actually enforce it is the regulatory authority in Uganda, the National Regulatory Authority, which is National Drug Authority, NDA Uganda. I would recommend that you have a look at their website so that at least you're familiar with them. And then in terms of their regulatory functions as prescribed and defined in the law, one, to grant marketing authorization, which is licensing products to be introduced and be used in the country. And that is all health products and technologies, medicines, both human and veterinary, food, supplements, and food products. We have cosmetics, we have medical devices, and related. So marketing authorization becomes the first function. If you were to do a clinical study in Uganda, clinical trial applications are processed through the National Drug Authority. So that is also part of their functions. Once you've registered a product and there's a change in the process of manufacturing it, you need to go through NDA to make that approval. And once they grant it, you're able to implement that change. You want to market your products in Uganda, your promotional materials must be reviewed and approved, and all your promotional activities must be compliant with the law. And on that account, then there's promotional materials review, which is part of their mandate. Then there's post-market surveillance. You brought a product you're distributing in the market. It is in their mandate to walk around and pick samples, analyze, to confirm that it is meeting the quality parameters and the attribute that we're expecting. If not, it will be classified under the falsified, counterfeit, or substandard medicines. And when it falls within that scope, they are mandated to take regulatory action, and that is part of the post-market surveillance. Then you have pharmacovigilance, which is what we're talking about. First, to preempt, detect, resolve, report, manage, and prevent future occurrences of adverse events or side effects associated with medicines. That is a responsibility that the regulator has, but also the industry has. The hospital healthcare professionals have, and the patient and the caregiver has. If you have a child who is unwell in the house or anybody in the house that is unwell, in case they use your medicine that they get an adverse effect, it is your responsibility to report it. And that is our own responsibility for all of us. Another function is good manufacturing licenses that they are allowed to meet. So the licenses to manufacturers need to be provided by them, be able to produce. And that is now linked as well to pharmacovigilance, and I'll talk about it in a way. Then we have distributorship, wholesaling, and retail licenses. If you're opening a distributorship or selling in many medicines, National Drug Authority is permitted to support with that. Then last and not least, import and export permits for trade purposes. If you're importing or exporting medicine from Uganda, you're required to get your license and import permits. And thus we go to the National Drug Authority, verifying that the medicine that you're importing or exporting meets the quality standard that were expected of you of an NS.
Okay, we've lost David for a bit there, but he's rejoining. Seems to be a network issue. We'll confirm once he's back. Please bear with us and stay on the call. Thank you.
Hello. Confirm you guys can hear me.
Yes, David, you're back.
Sorry. I had a network problem that actually just disconnected abruptly. I don't know, but let me just bring my screen up.
Yes, the screen is up.
Good. So I was to look at pharmacovigilance obligations that come with the current requirements. So each of the different entities, and I've decided to focus on only four for this particular moment. We have the National Regulatory Authority, which is the National Drug Authority, NDA. Their main responsibility is first to establish a national pharmacovigilance system. And we know we have the National Pharmacovigilance System domiciled center, NPC, National Pharmacovigilance Center domiciled within the NDA to ensure reporting, analysis, risk mitigation for all health products and technologies in Uganda. That is their first and core mandatory mandate. And that is only seeing the whole overarching ecosystem of pharmacovigilance. Number two, to share information based on pharmacovigilance reports with other regulatory authorities in the continent. And that is anchored on the fact that we are having a kind of, I would say, harmonized and coordinated regulatory regime within the continent, especially following the establishment of the African Medicines Agency. And then they also have the responsibility and the privilege to be able to institute market actions to prevent harm to the public. If today David's medicine was causing harm in the country, Uganda NDA is permitted to, with the drug, tell me to recall the product and actually compel me to, failure to which I'm actually prosecutable within the courts of law in Uganda for failing to do what I needed to have done. So those are the core mandates of what the NDA should do in pharmacovigilance. And that means for the most of the functions that you will see in terms of reviewing the safety reports and all that will fall within part one. Then the other one is now the external facing, but also the this enforcement and the penal implementation of the penal code where necessary in terms of punishing people who are not instituting, complying with those requirements. The NDA will also set up the guidelines and the laws or regulations on how things should be done, which is part of their function. Then we have marketing authorization holder. The marketing authorization holder is the license holder for any product in the country in Uganda. And their responsibility is one, establish and maintain a pharmacovigilance system for their products that are manufactured, distributed, and used in Uganda. If it is manufactured in Uganda, you must have a PV system. It is distributed in Uganda, you must have. It is used in Uganda, it must have a PV system. So it is your responsibility to own the license to that product. And in owning that license, having a PV system means you must have an appointed qualified person for pharmacovigilance and a deputy who will oversee the PV functions and PV system in the event that the QPPV is not there. So you need a qualified person and a deputy. And the deputy is to support and to take over responsibility from him or her in the event that they are absent. And in terms of the responsibility of designing the PV system, monitoring and overseeing that PV system, monitoring and analyzing safety events, safety reports that are coming in through the reporting channels, either emails or mobile messages or social media scanning, literature screening. There's a lot of other functions that the QPPV will be required to do. But the fundamental number one, having a robust PV system that you must design and you must have oversight of it. And then two, reporting safety issues and taking safety actions when necessary, either communicating, either mitigating, whatever that is, which fall within your scope. And the marketing authorization holder is mandated to ensure that is done. If not, they will be held culpable to the law, and therefore then it's punishable from a regulatory legal injunction standpoint. For healthcare professional, you are a pharmacist, you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you're a clinician, whatever it is, you are mandated to report all adverse events received to the NDA and marketing authorization holder in Uganda. You are to address or strive to resolve any adverse effects experienced by patients under your care. For example, if you're treating a patient and they come in, they have an allergic reaction, it is in your interest to report it, but most importantly, to see how you can mitigate the self-care effects that it has on the patient. The reporting is to ensure that the product is either they introduce a new warning or pull it out of the market if it has a quality issue that is causing the harm. But you need to mitigate those two. So reporting and trying to resolve and make their life, patients' life better, bearable. Patients and caregivers, reporting all adverse events experienced to healthcare professionals, marketing authorization holders, and National Drug Authority. And in terms of reporting here is that sometimes people don't know how to report to the regulatory authorities. So patients need to report to the doctor who can now report to the regulatory authorities. Though we also know there are some healthcare professionals who have not been reporting as much, and that is now abdicating their duty of care and responsibility as well. Then the other responsibility that is pharmacovigilance is buying and using medicines and other health products only from legitimate supply chain players. When you go to somebody who is just walking around with medicines in their pocket and they're selling it to you, That is not a legitimate way. I am not adopting pharmacovigilance principles and practices as expected as a vision for you as an expert. So those are opportunities where we should make improvements. So those are obligations. And specifically now I'll go to the marketing authorization holder. The guidelines, when you look at the Ugandan ecosystem, and I'll talk about it, what is changing in the next slide. For marketing authorization holder, if you're working with a company and you're in this call, and that company is a marketing authorization holder, they own a license for that product. Currently, the requirement has been, at the time of application of your product for registration, you give a summary of the pharmacovigilance system as part of your registration dosing. And the key thing that should be included is that proof that the applicant or their agent, if you have a local technical representative in Uganda, has a qualified person for pharmacovigilance. And the contact details of that QPPV should be specified. And one thing to be demonstrated, and this is now overarching across the East Africa region, they must have the requisite qualification, which is medical training, whether as a pharmacist or medical doctor, and then they must have been trained on pharmacovigilance. Must have been trained on pharmacovigilance and are able to either design the system, maintain the system, and report where necessary and institute all the pharmacovigilance-related actions and activities that are required. Number two, give a statement signed by the applicant or the agent that the applicant has the necessary means to fulfill the tasks and responsibility listed in the regulations and guidelines when you're making your submission for the product. So you're saying, in case of anything, I have the capability to. And that signed statement and declaration becomes a binding document between you and the National Drug Authority at the point of submission. That is at the application. Once you've submitted the application, there will be continuous monitoring of the PV systems and making of updates as necessary. In the last couple of years, Uganda NDA has not done inspections, but they've always reached out to verify whether people have QPPVs and all that. I would say relatively in a relaxed way, but now with the law in place and with a positive appetite and the growth of pharmacovigilance requirements across the continent, the question is, will we comply? And if you're going to comply, how do we ensure that happens? And that is important. So what is changing? Initially, in principle, there was a requirement to have a QPPV, but it was mostly administered for foreign entities at the point of registration. Most local manufacturers do not have qualified persons for pharmacovigilance, which if you are a professional, that is an opportunity for you. If you are a manufacturer, this is an opportunity now. Start setting up your system and doing what is right. And why is that important? The new law that I talked about mandates that manufacturing licenses should be and shall only be issued on condition that a QPPV is appointed and the manufacturing facility has a pharmacovigilance system is in place. Failure to which you'll not be able to get your license. And without a license, you're not permitted to manufacture. Without permission to manufacture, you're not in business. So those are key things that we need to take note about and over this particular point. Then initially the pharmacovigilance application were defined in the guidelines of other regulatory functions, like the statement that I picked and I shared here, that is at the time of application, is in the guidelines for registration of medicines and medical products in Uganda, mostly pharmaceutical products. The same would apply in biological and biosimilars, but there is no guideline for pharmacovigilance. We only have the regulations for pharmacovigilance. With this new law and the expectation in terms of streamlining and strengthening the pharmacovigilance ecosystem, guidelines will definitely come in place. And therefore, then when the guidelines come, how do we engage? If you ask me as David, based on my professional experience and engagement and interest in the industry, the regulations will definitely need to be reviewed, that the guidelines will need to be developed. I would be asking myself, what amendments do we want to propose in the regulations as they are to make them be in line with the law? You remember I talked about the framework here, this schematic, the pyramid. We have law, we'll go policies and regulations. Policies are at the ministry level, but at the regulator NDA, which is enforcing this, they'll start with regulations. Then we'll have guidelines, then we'll have guidelines and procedures. So using that schematic, I would be keen on saying, okay, if this is what's happening, what amendment do I want to propose in the regulation when it comes to light? And two, with those regulations, what guidelines would come into place? How do I do that? Read other guidelines in the country, in the region. That is, Kenya has guidelines, Uganda, Rwanda rather, Tanzania. Read them, see what are the improvements, what are the challenges. But most of them are drawing on the good pharmacovigilance practices by the European Medicines Agency. How do we draw those to have standard guidelines? So then you form guidelines that will be one, reflective of your realities in the market, and two, responsive to the needs in the industry. And therefore, being alert to that possibility. Next, when it is being implemented, there will be QPPVs in the country, in Uganda. And by the virtue of current provision is the QPPV should be locally based in Uganda. The other countries have provision where they should be based within the East Africa community in variable proportions and all that. So you need to ask yourself, if the guidelines and the requirements say you need to be based in Uganda, how do you ensure you fulfill that requirement and you manage it in that country? That is an important part. So with that understanding, where do you start? And in this schematic, I looked at it in two ways. One, if you're a professional who is looking at getting into the pharmacovigilance space to work as a QPPV, first thing is to understand the requirements. I've tried high level to give you an overview of what that means, but I would encourage you read the guidelines, the laws, but also the regulations. Two, get the skills. If the requirement is to have QPPV training, enroll for a training program and get the skills so that when you are positioning yourself, you already have the requisite entry point. Two, strategically position yourself for the opportunities. How do you do that? Engaging in industry forums and engagement so that you know where things are happening and what the dynamics are, but you also build networks. Most careers, people make them through networks and relationships that they're forming in the industry. And two, gain experience. How do you gain experience? Seek internship placements, seek these, I would say, contractual consultancy opportunities and projects where you can get them. And if you can get an entry-level role, get that entry-level role and start from somewhere. Once you do that, you're growing in your careers, you're gaining experience, and you start going where you need to be. So as a professional, key things that should be there: understand the requirement, get the skills, position yourself for the opportunity by engaging with people in the industry, gain experience, and grow your career in pharmacovigilance where you want to be, if that is what you're interested in. If you are a pharmaceutical company or any other company that is regulated by the National Drug Authority in Uganda, either dealing in medicine, medical devices, cosmetics, herbal remedies, anything, understand the requirements. You must understand the requirement. That is the fundamental starting point. Then, internally in your company, what are your gaps and what are your capabilities? Sometimes people start saying we need to onboard a QPP because they know they don't have any, but they don't know what is this person supposed to do because they don't understand the requirements, but also they don't understand what capabilities do they have, where PV will add value and how it will add value. And the reason as why I say that, sometimes you have a QPPV with their role description only as per defined in the law, not as per what is the company's operational context and reality. That becomes a gap. So this scoping internal gaps and capabilities is a contextual assessment of the company where it is. Then explore options in closing the gap, and in terms of evaluating options and adopting a pathway, you can contract an outsourced service provider, or you can have an in-house qualified person for pharmacovigilance. Outsourced is a contractor, or internal is somebody who is your employee full-time. So you evaluate your option to understand, does it make sense? What is the risk profile that you're able to absorb? How much are you going to pay? What are the costs? So you evaluate based on your own internal criteria to evaluate whether I want to go out or I want to stay here. Then contract the person or the entity or the company that you want to work with. That will be next step. After you evaluate the option and you adopt a pathway, you contract them. Then maintain the system and ensure you stay compliant. How do you maintain the system? You have a QPPV in place, hold them accountable. But in holding them accountable, also resource them. Give them the requisite infrastructural system, the remuneration where necessary, and all the support system and interaction with the regulators to be able to have the autonomy and the authority to implement your PV system. Why do I say that? Sometimes you have a PV person only for paper because you don't want to be held accountable and to be held to be in contravention of what the law says. But in reality, they are doing nothing. That is not a good place to be. So that is an opportunity for us. So how can we help as an organization? We offer training services. I already talked about the institute. The 5 courses I already mentioned. Our training in pharmacovigilance and patient safety is QPPB approved by the Pharmacy Board in Kenya. And we would be more than glad to train some of you. And I know some of you have already trained with us. The next cohort is starting. The link has already been shared in the chat. Please sign up. Let's walk the journey with you. If there's a business here that is a company here that is looking at probably complying with the regulations, we offer advisory services, including our source KPPV services. And on that account, we are open to engage and offer the services to you. But even if you want to employ somebody and you're starting in the point of evaluating what your options are and doing your internal gap assessment and contextual assessment, we would be glad to support you through the audit services. One, to assess where you are, to stress test your capabilities, but also to develop an action plan so that when you're going to either outsource or have an internal QPPV, you know what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and where it needs to end with. So then you have a compliant pharmacovigilance system as a company with a robust pharmacovigilance system master file, and that would be your frontier for the next future or where you want to have your systems. That is important, and I would want to leave it at that. For those of us who are from Uganda, we are having our engagements in Uganda, and I would say there's good progress on that front. And on this account, we have 2 events that are coming up. One, we have an industry networking dinner, which we are hosting at the main Pasha Hotel and Spa, Kampala, Uganda, on the 14th of August, next week, but one Friday, 7 p.m. GMT +3, up till late. So for those of you who are here, please register. Share with some of your friends. Let's connect. Let's network. Let's position ourselves strategically for what we are looking for into the future. That is for the networking dinner that we're planning for 2 weeks from now. So start planning early. The next webinar that we'll be doing that is focusing on Uganda is regulatory processes in Uganda with focus on marketing authorization requirements. And this is mostly geared towards how do people understand what is the process of registering a product? Where do you go? How do you go through the process? What are the requirements? So that we're able to promote a knowledge and awareness around these systems and these requirements. So that will be coming up in the next 1 week, 7th of August, which will be next week. So whoever has not registered, please register. I'll take you through the process, so some of the provision in the guidelines, then we engage subsequently and continue building this ecosystem and strengthening pharmaceutical and life science industry across Africa. With that said, I take a pause and open up the conversation to take questions, comments, and also contributions that you guys might have for me. So any questions, any comments, anything that you guys would want to share? I'm the Ugandan team. I'll be there with you on 14th. So please help us to be there. Any questions? Are we okay? I'm seeing thumbs up. I'm seeing claps as well. But I want to open it up for questions so that I don't leave anybody with anything that is not addressed. Because I'm not seeing any question. You can also share your questions in the chat as well, guys. So in case you have a question, share it in the chat. If there's none, I'll hand it over to you, Julia, to just bring the feedbacks for the post survey so that we can get feedback as we also wait for anybody with a question. Oh, and I just realized as you bring that up, I wanted to just let guys know for the team in Uganda, Hillary Nasolo, who is here with us, is part of our team and she's supporting some of our work in Uganda. Yes, Hillary. So in case you have any queries, any conversations, feel free to reach out to her. She'll be there to support where she can. Hillary, you had something to say?
I was raising my hand for recognition.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Yes, that's okay. That's fantastic. Good. So whoever is here who would want to reach out to Hillary, please do. She'll be able to guide you and engage with you. But I'm also sharing her email address so that in case of anything, you can reach out to her on anything related to APN, our work in Uganda, how we are doing it. And you have something? We have the feedback form that is here. Give me your feedback, honest feedback. The good thing is I'm not taking names. So if there's something that I said you didn't like, let me know. If something that I said that you really appreciate and love, please also let me know. so that we make improvements. Continuous improvement is the principle that we adopt as an organization to get better every other day. And when we get better together with everybody we engage with and we support this journey. So scan the QR code or check the link in the chat and give us your feedback so that we start walking the journey together here. Great, thank you, Abena. When you visit Uganda, Hillary will be there. And when you visit Kenya, I'll be here for you. In case of anybody who needs any guidance from APN, you can reach out to us through the APN email address I'm sending in the chat. If you want to talk to me directly, I'm giving my email as well. Agriculture. A difference between post-market surveillance and pharmacovigilance. They come close together, but they are not the same. Why is that? Post-market surveillance looks at you've already brought a product, it is in the market, and therefore we are doing surveillance, monitoring to see if there's any issue that might affect the product in terms of safety, efficacy, and quality standard. And on that account, normally what would happen is picking either the reports, partly pharmacovigilance reports, and two, also picking products and testing them, confirm whether they meet the quality attributes that were indicated. Dryness, dissolution tests, all the quality attributes that we would look at in terms of even the content of the ingredients that we have. So all those considerations can come into place. So that is number one, post-market surveillance. Then when you talk about pharmacovigilance, you're looking at vigilance of the pharmacovigilance system, starts before the product is in the market. You'll see if in case you enroll for the pharmacovigilance course that we have, pharmacovigilance will start in the product development when we're looking at safety issues when the product is still in development. And that is why in clinical trials, we have development safety update reports, where you're monitoring safety events that might happen during the product use. Then after that, we go to the next level, when the product is now being registered. And after the registration, we want you to give us a system on how will you minimize risks of the product in the market, risk minimization plan, the RMP. Then after that, we have a risk management plan. You're minimizing risks, but you're also managing risks when they arise. Then once the product is in the market, you monitor, you detect, you resolve, you report, and you prevent future occurrences of similar safety concerns and safety issues. So you'll realize post-market is after the product is in the market. Pharmacovigilance will start before the product is in the market, when it is being introduced into the market, after it has been in the market, when it is in the market, but even after. And that is why you'll see there are people who will say, when a product has been in the market for a long period of time, it has been removed in the market, but then you realize long-term safety concerns that were never detected a while back are now emerging. Then they need to be managed. And those are the key things that people look into, the long-term effects of products and everything. So I hope that helps, and just confirm for me if that is understandable and that is also valuable for you. Good, thank you. Thank you. Welcome, Farida, to the session. Glad to have you here. Good. Let us get the feedback. We have 42 people. I'm only seeing 7 responses so far. If I can get at least 30, I would be happy. So do me the favor. I'm seeing there's a question here. When do you monitor an adverse drug reaction? Is it when there's a signal you initiate the activity? So normally the first thing is when you brought your product into the market, the product information leaflet will have some of the side effects that are characteristic and actually associated with the product. So your intention, number one, is for those that we suspect that will arise or that we know will happen, we need to start monitoring them as early as possible when the product in the market is being used by any first one person. The reason is maybe in our study, we did not get much more details about it. But as long as it is in the market, it will have maybe heightened effect in other people, or maybe it was a false alert of product or side effects of that product. So we will then eliminate it from our list. So you monitor either to add a safety issue and actually put extra minimization, or to eliminate an adverse event that you thought would be there, but it's really not there. So that is number one. Number two, when you get a signal there's actually a noted case of a particular adverse event, then you start monitoring to see what is the trend. It was only found, for example, in one patient in Uganda. Is it an isolated case? Or are they using another product? But if we get it in, let's say, for example, Uganda with a population of almost 50 million people, and we get the case has affected 1,000 people and the product was used by 5,000, that is already a 20% risk of occurrence. Then now we need to monitor it actively and start instituting risk minimization measures, whether we are writing a dear healthcare professional letter to communicate that risk to doctors, or how are we managing it. So it is important to know which adverse drug reaction are we going to monitor? When was it first identified, either during the study or after? But if not specific risk adverse drug reaction, it is at high level monitoring to say, do we have a system that in case David gets unwell from using this product, he will report back? And if he reports back, what measures do we need to take to ensure that we mitigate for those? So those are some of the key things that will be important. I hope that helps, Farida.
Thank you. But if I could also elaborate on what I wanted to probably hear from you is, for example, if you have a product that is on the market already, but they've not probably there's no signal, or you've not had any complaint from the users or the stakeholders out there, can you initiate PV activity purposely to monitor ADRs? And also, in that case, when do you record in the ADR form? Because sometimes you do a monitoring of ADR, but it is also important that you have accountability for those field visits you have. For example, if I decide to go to Eastern Uganda, I monitor probably some centers, or I'll be specific to maybe farms, because I'm in veterinary practice. And you go to farms in Eastern Uganda and monitor product. For example, if it has been vaccination, you monitor these farms where vaccination took place to see if there is any ADR. But you find out that probably there's no ADR, but a visit has occurred. And you're going to tell NDA at the end of the month that, you know what, we've monitored our product in Eastern Uganda for this period, maybe for these 30 days, and there was no ADR. But what evidence would NDA use to confirm that we are actually actively monitoring ADRs? Because if I'm not filling in the ADR form because I don't have any adverse drug reaction, where would you account for this visit? Because we've put in resources, we've put in time, but we are continuously not receiving any ADR, but you're in the field. So what kind of information would the regulator want to confirm that indeed you've done the activity, and here is the report? What kind of information would they want to look at, other than the ADRs that are not there at that particular time?
So thank you so much for that question, and thank you for the clarification. So number one, when you look at products that are in the market, whether there's a safety issue or not, you have a QPPV, a pharmacovigilance system, and a QPPV who is overseeing that system, which means these are part of the activities to monitor. People will report, or you will engage with people to ask whether there are any adverse reaction or not. That is number one. If you get them, you should be able to report them. If you don't get them, in the pharmaceutical sector, especially when you look at the pharmacovigilance for humans, because that is where I would say most of my work in pharmacovigilance has been human products, health products for human beings, is you have a periodic safety update report. So, and each of them have intervals upon which you need to make submissions. If the product is a very new, innovative product for countries that are using international birth date, you need to make submissions after every 6 months for the first 2 years, which means any activity that you did, any findings that you made will be captured in that periodic safety update report. Or in the EU, they talk about it as the periodic benefit risk evaluation report. So that would be number one. Number two, if they're not capturing it in the PSUR, depending on the intervals and all that, you initiate a monitoring activity as part of, is it a study or is it not just a normal monitoring activity? It is routine pharmacovigilance activities that forms part of your own internal pharmacovigilance reporting systems. If it is a study that you're doing and you're keen on publishing that documentation and capturing accurately, then it will now fall within the scope of PASS, which is we normally talk about post-authorization safety studies. You're monitoring safety issues post-authorization of the product, or post-authorization efficacy studies, PAES. And in that case, then, before you even commission the study, you need to notify NDA or any regulatory authority in the country where you're operating to indicate that I have this product in the market. There's no safety signal yet, but I want to take a proactive agency as a regulatory person or as a QPPV, as a pharmacovigilance expert, to monitor whether there's any safety incidents in the market among the people who have used it for this XY period. Then it becomes an approved study, which you will then report back to NDA. Or is a post-authorization efficacy study. Then you go through the whole process again. Once you complete, you report that on that PASS report to the regulator or PES. But then after that, the findings will also be part still of your own periodic safety update report at the end of the timelines as recommended by the guidelines. I hope that helps, Farida.
Finally, it helps, but just finally, I wanted to know that for situations whereby you're monitoring, but there is no any ADR. You've mentioned it, but I think it's not very clear still to me. Where there is no ADR, but the activity took place. Yes. So what kind of information would you solicit to show NDA that, you know what, in this period, we went to these farms or we went to these sites? It's not a study, we're just monitoring safety. We went to this region, we monitored, there was no ADR.
What would come there is, you have an activity report. It is part of your pharmacovigilance monitoring activities. So when they ask you, it is internally in your company. Yes. So you have an activity report. On 31st of July, I visited, let's say, for example, Mulago Hospital. I had conversation with XY doctors on trying to find out if there are any adverse events, the number of use of the product and everything. So you will have that activity report internally. When NDA makes a request, they want you to demonstrate, then you have the records from that engagement and the findings of that engagement. That is what you present. Sometimes they will ask you to give your safety pharmacovigilance reporting for a period of time, not a PSUR. And at that time, if you don't have any, all you need to demonstrate is that sometimes actually all these visits, they are good to have, but not many people do them. All you need to demonstrate is, do you have a reporting channel for start? You have an email address, you have a mobile number where people can report in case of anything. You've stress tested it and actually you validated it works. Over that period, did you receive any emails? How many times did you monitor it? Did there have SOPs that are governing how you're doing it? So then your own internal systems will vindicate you by the virtue that, I would say, would vindicate you by the virtue of demonstrating you've done what needed to be done and there's no safety issues. But unless you can prove you have those communication channels, because that is what, if at all you were to do a PV audit, I remember we had our PV audit like 3 years ago. Yeah, that was early 2024. There will be a monitoring of all your reporting systems, all the systems that you have internally, knowledge of those systems, and how they're being used. So once you've demonstrated you have a system in place, whether you have a safety event or not, you can share what you've been doing and what that entails. There's no problem. And there shouldn't be a problem. But if you take an action, you go to the field to get any safety information, it is within your mandate and your responsibility to have an activity report. And that activity report, best case scenario is you are the PV person, you've signed it, and the person you visited also signs to verify. Because people can fake reports. How do I confirm you went to Mulago Hospital and had conversation with XY doctors? They must also kind of certify it on their end if you had the engagements here.
Thank you. It's now clear. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The non-ADR also needs to be reported from pharmacovigilance in addition to the monitoring. If it is a known one and the safety level is not as bad, you don't need to report. It is something that was already expected. But if it was indicated, let's say, for example, there's a risk of headache when you're using this medicine, and then the headache was too much that actually somebody suffered migraines or even collapsed, then you need to report that. So the question is, what is the severity of the adverse drug reaction? And when you look at signal management and evaluation, those are things that will come up. Then the other question, what are your comments on zero reporting and the evidence of it? Null reporting, you have to give your null report, and that is what I was responding to in terms of Farinda's case. You have no safety issues to report, but at least you'll be doing your pharmacovigilance monitoring activities. You demonstrate that you've been doing it, you've checked your emails a couple of times. Sometimes that is where the data loggers now would be important. You have an email log, tracking log. Somebody can go to the back end of your ICT to see how often do you check that email. Then that tracker would be used as evidence that you've actually been monitoring and there's nothing that has come in. Then you share that and that would be it. Nil reports, they're called, Abena. I hope that's okay. Is that okay? Fantastic, thank you. Good. I'm still getting only 12 responses submitted. I don't know why you guys don't like giving me feedback. And I thought we were friends on a Friday with it. Anyway, so with that said, I think I come to the end of my presentation and the session today. Thank you for all of you who have joined us for today. And thank you for being part of this journey. Wish you all a good rest of your weekend, a good end of July as we end the month of July, and a happy August and prosperous August as we get into the second half of the year. Thank you and have a good night.